So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jade Gill, and I want to welcome you to my presentation on my undergraduate final year research project entitled Narrative for Story Exchange Evaluation, Empathy Outcomes in Second Level Teachers in Ireland. So to firstly just give you a really quick overview of what I'm going to cover in the presentation. So I'm going to give a quick introduction into who I am and what I have done that has led me to giving this presentation today. And I will also describe a snapshot of the work that Narrative 4 do, who are my collaborative partner organisation on this research project. Then I'm going to fly through some of the kind of relevant literature that's informed my literature review and the research question for my project. I'll then discuss the methodology for my study and the data analysis process, and then the main findings. And I will also give a really quick run through of my discussion section of my final year project as well. So as I said, I'm Jade Gill, and I'm a fourth year student at UL studying the BSc in psychology. So for my FYP, I'm working with Dr. Jennifer McMahon in the Department of Psychology and Narrative 4 to investigate empathy outcomes in second level teachers in Ireland who engage in Narrative 4's story exchange facilitator training. So to give you a bit of a background on Narrative 4, they're an Irish charity that were founded actually in the US in 2012. And since then, they've spread across the world and into Limerick. And basically, the key mission of Narrative 4 is to have every student in Ireland experience the benefits of empathy education. And they do this through their core methodology, which is the story exchange, which is the basis for my research project. So it's a storytelling intervention that's designed to promote social emotional learning and particularly empathy development. So to kind of give a bit more information on the story exchange, basically it's a one-day activity, 6 to 10 participants, and lasts about 90 minutes. It's based on the premise of circle work, and there's plenty of benefits to circle work in terms of identity development and increased engagement among students, and also improving children's social skills. So there's 5 steps to the story exchange: preparing, modelling, pairing and sharing, exchanging stories, and reflecting. So in the preparing section, there's kind of, an introduction and an explanation of what the story exchange will entail, and an icebreaker so participants can kind of become more comfortable with each other. And then in the modelling section, there tends to be 2 facilitators who are trained up in delivering the story exchange programme. So they will basically model what the participants are going to be doing. And in a story exchange, which then occurs during the pairing and sharing section, participants are put into groups of 2 and they're given a very kind of broad theme. So it could be a time I felt proud, a time I was scared, a time I experienced compassion. And they're instructed to tell their partner a 5-minute story around this theme. And then basically the pairs return to the group and they have to tell their partner's story in the first person. So say my partner's name is Mary, I'll start off my section by saying, hello, my name is Mary, and this is a time I felt afraid. And I'll continue and tell my partner's story in the first person. And every pair basically does that. And at the end then, a bit of time is given to reflection where you share a hope for your partner going forward and you discuss how it felt to tell someone else's story and to hear your own story being told. And basically the whole idea is to perspective take and see another person's experience. So Narrative 4 runs Story Exchange Facilitator Training, which is a 1-day CPD training program, or since COVID has become an 8-hour kind of self-directed learning experience. So then to kind of give a really quick overview of the literature, so social emotional learning is defined as the ability to interact with others, regulate one's own emotions and behaviour, solve problems and communicate effectively. And the Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning, or CASEL, have an SEL framework that describes social emotional learning as consisting of empathy, self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So Narrative 4 kind of zone in on empathy and the importance of empathy for students. So basically, empathy is found to reduce prejudicial attitudes, and improve relationships, and perceived similarity is a prerequisite for empathic understanding of another person. So then, looking at storytelling interventions in education, research by the Yale Centre for Emotional Intelligence found that students who take part in Narrative 4 interventions are happier, more enthusiastic and excited, and more connected to their teachers and experience less bullying. And other links between storytelling interventions and empathy include, with storytelling, Manny 2008 found that people can experience the thrill of another person's perspective but remain safe. And perspective taking is found to be a key kind of component of empathy. And another journal article found that over 90% of young people feel empathy for a storyteller after taking part in an intergenerational storytelling intervention. So my research question is basically centered around whether engaging in the training, whether similar outcomes that the story exchange has for students is found in teachers, because research has shown that social emotional learning is critical for teachers as well in the classroom. So our research question then is, what role does the narrative force story exchange methodology play in the development of empathy and other social emotional competencies in a sample of Irish secondary school teachers? So to kind of go through the methodology, our sample consists of 10 qualified second level teachers, and the teachers are basically working in many different kind of areas. So it's secondary schools, youth reach projects and probation projects, to name just a couple. And all of the participants have completed Narrative 4's story exchange facilitator training, and many of them have then facilitated story exchanges in the classroom. So convenience sampling was employed with the help of Narrative 4, and our study design was semi-structured interviews conducted on Microsoft Teams due to COVID again, and they lasted about 30 to 40 minutes. And Narrative 4 acted as an information gatekeeper for all of this. So my colleagues in Narrative 4 basically reached out and helped us with the sampling process. So we basically, in the semi-structured interview schedule, asked them some demographic questions, asked for their opinion on the importance of SEL for teachers, asked about their motivation to complete the Narrative 4 training, and asked them questions related to the social emotional competencies that I listed earlier from Castle's SEL framework. And we also asked them about the effectiveness of their training. Then for data analysis, all the interviews were recorded and transcribed verbatim, and using NVivo software, they were coded. And for a theoretical background of that, we used Braun and Clark's 6-phase framework for coding the transcripts. So going on then to our results, I'll be completely transparent. The data analysis and interpretation is still ongoing at the moment. I'm still in the process of kind of coding and coming up with my themes. But at the moment, 3 themes are anticipated to emerge. So that is increased empathy among teachers, improved professional relationships, and a kind of on the negative side, then concerns surrounding boundary maintenance during the story exchange. So then to talk about kind of the discussion around that. So similar to the literature, it's echoed that the storytelling intervention does lead to increased empathy in teachers, and also that it leads to that increased social emotional awareness and social emotional skills lead to improved relationships, which can be applied in a professional context. So to discuss some of the limitations of the research, so to discuss some of the practical implications of the research, it's found that how can increased empathy improve teaching abilities? So taking things into consideration, like modifying questions and taking students' circumstances into account for feedback and discipline, could be a really good way of using this newfound empathy and newfound ability to perspective take in the classroom. And as I mentioned, it will also improve workplace relations. So some of the limitations of the study then is that only short-term outcomes of the story exchange are measured. So all my participants have completed the Narrative 4 training in the last maybe 2 years, and it would be really interesting to see in kind of more longitudinal terms how this increased empathy, does it last or does it kind of wane over time? And also there was a small bit of similarity in the subject areas taught by the facilitators that took part in the interviews. So a lot of them were art teachers, English teachers, kind of that SPHE teachers, CSPE teachers. So it would be interesting to see if kind of the opposite side, maybe a lot of those teachers are based in kind of creative realms in their subjects. So it'd be interesting to see if, maths teachers, science teachers, if they had similar experiences. So that is something I'd like to do if I had more time, maybe expand the sample. And then for future research, we'd recommend maybe looking at the impact of the story exchange on vulnerable minority groups, such as migrant populations or, maybe LGBTQ, this kind of thing. So basically looking at not just the teachers, but the students and how this intervention can be applied in different contexts to help different groups of people. And yeah, that's kind of a really quick overview of what I'm doing for my FYP. So thanks a million for listening. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.